Today we're going to talk about the Chapter 83 CBRF Dietary Guidelines in regards to the menu planning process and the safe food handling and serving for the residents. You will learn about the dietary guidelines according to the USDA and the CBRF dietary requirements to provide appropriate meals to meet the client's nutritional needs and on how to safely handle those food and the storage practices as well. There's two components for food service. There's the meal planning part and then the actual preparation process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the second part of the dietary CBRF guidelines of Chapter 83. It's Section 41. I'm going to talk about Part 2 first in the meal planning because before you can even talk about food prep, you have to kind of know what foods you're going to be serving. So we're going to cover that part first and then jump back. So DHS 8341-2 says, A, diets, the CBRF shall provide each resident with palatable food that meets the recommended dietary allowance based on current dietary guidelines for Americans and any special dietary needs of each resident. And the CBRF shall provide a therapeutic diet as ordered for each resident. So dietary guidelines. There is a website that you can go to, www.dietaryguidelines.gov. And what it is first bullet point is build a healthy plate. Before you think about what goes on your plate in your cup of bowl, it's you think about these things. So it should be the fruits, vegetables, the protein sources, the meat sources, dairy, cheeses, and the bread and the milk. You want to switch to skim milk instead of 1% or 1% instead of the whole. Make half of your plate fruits and vegetables. The second bullet point is cutting back on foods high in solid fats, added sugars, and salt. So when you're doing the grocery shopping and the menu planning, you want to make sure that you're using lower salt foods, lower fat foods, avoiding the sugary drinks and incorporating more water, tea, coffee, and the milk. Select the fruit for dessert. There's also other ways you can make desserts that are palatable that the residents like by substituting in the sugars, using applesauce, for example, or Splenda instead of the regular sugar. Look for the high sodium foods, for example, the turkey, the bacon, ham, olives. Those are things that you're going to want to serve fewer times in the week. The next bullet point is eating the right amount of calories for you. Now, this is something to keep in mind. The U.S. dietary guidelines are really for the general public. We're serving people that have maybe compromised immune systems, they're diabetic, elderly people that have disease processes or even need to keep weight on rather than keeping weight off. So there's a bunch of things that you have to keep in mind when you're planning the menus and when you're serving and meeting the nutritional needs of your residents. So when it says eat the right amount of calories for you, you're going to want to talk with the nurse, talk with the dietitian, pay attention to what the doctors knows about that resident, as well as looking at the resident's eating habits to see what is a good weight for them and what's a good calorie amount for that person. The next bullet point is being physically active your way. Again, you're going to have to take a look at your residents. What is their ability? What can they do involving therapies, involving the whole interdisciplinary team to get them active, because that is also part of their nutrition and the USDA guidelines. When you're shopping and planning those menus, look at the food labels to help you make better choices, making sure that you have those lower sugar foods and the lower salt foods. DHS 8341.2 is regarding the therapeutic diets. That's the other piece of it. It has you, the CBRF shall provide therapeutic diets, so we are required to provide them. Whether someone comes in on a diabetic diet or a heart-healthy diet or a 2-gram sodium diet, the best thing you can do is have a registered dietitian or have your nurse and the doctor taking a look and seeing, what can we do to make that easier for that resident? And you want to review those facilities menus to assure correct foods will be served according to the therapeutic diets. If they're having difficulty following that diet order, again, ask for a dietitian to consult with the physician and appropriately document and write down what those food preferences are for that resident. Maybe it's even some dementia or other disability that is keeping them from taking in what they need to take in. DHS 8341-2, the meals, the CBRF, it says, should provide meals that are routinely served family or restaurant style unless contraindicated in a resident's individual service plan or for short-term medical needs. The CBRF shall provide 3 meals a day unless otherwise arranged according to the program statement or the resident's individual service plan. And a nutritional snack shall be offered in the evening or more often as consistent with the resident's dietary needs. So providing meals routinely served, family style or restaurant style, that's something that, the facility will decide what works best for the whole of the residents that live in that facility. Really, it's best to get these people out of their rooms. You don't want to make it a habit of having them eat in their rooms. You want them socializing. You want the staff to be able to help them safely eat if they have problems choking. It's all about that experience because that is going to help them have that quality of life and help them to stay nutritionally healthy by getting the meals that they need rather than eating in their rooms. 3 meals a day. If somebody comes in and they only ate 2 meals a day, there's that thing too where you want to make sure it's their residents' rights to keep with what they've been doing, but you want to at least, it has to be offered. So if they don't want it, they don't want it, like say that person wants to get up at 10 o'clock and then you're offering them the toast and the coffee or something like that and then providing them a lunch later. So again, it's according to their individual service plans. The other nutritious snack point, it's important after supper and before breakfast the next day that you're going to want to make sure that they have some kind of substantial snack before they go to bed, especially for diabetics, people with low weight loss. You're going to want to make sure that a sandwich with meat spread or peanut butter on it, crackers and cheese, milk and cookies is a great way to go. It's something to get them eating and they will have a better night's sleep with that snack. And it'll help keep their blood sugars, if they're diabetic, on an even keel between supper the night before and breakfast the next day. Again, back to 8341. If a resident is away from the CBRF during the time a meal is served, the CBRF shall offer food to the resident on the resident's return. So you're going to want to make sure that you have documentation that you did indeed talk to these residents when they come back in and you have a plan for them and save the meal that the other residents had, if that's something that they deserve to have when they come back. So you are responsible for what these people are eating no matter what around the clock. DHS 8341.2C, the menus. The CBRF shall make responsible adjustments to the menu for individual residents' food likes, habits, customs, conditions, and appetites. The CBRF shall prepare weekly written menus and shall make menus available to the residents. Deviations from the planned menu shall be documented on the menu. So a couple things here. You need to also know what the residents' food preferences are when they move in, and then every, like 30 days or when there's a change in condition, you're going to want to always update because these people change their minds, and that's perfectly okay for them to do that. You need to make sure that you're documenting and letting the dietary staff know or the universal caregivers know that so-and-so, food preferences have changed. So keeping record of those things in the kitchen so that you can make adjustments to that menu and the individual service plans. Maybe they lost their dentures for a little while. They're going to have to adjust the texture of the diet, or maybe they've gone through some illness and their appetite's changed. What are we going to do to make sure that they get in enough nutrition? Do we need to add a supplement? Things like that. So you always have to stay in tune and adjust those menus accordingly on an individual basis. That point 2 there, CBRF shall prepare weekly written menus and make the menus available to the residents. So there's a whole other topic on how to make that cost effective, having a 5-week menu cycle so that you're not scrambling by that week on Friday to what am I going to serve for the next week. So you want to make sure that you're having a planned menu that goes out a ways, and then when they change, you want to post those in the facility and make sure all the residents can read that and understand. And then when there's substitutions, whether there's a holiday or a dislike that somebody doesn't like it, or for some reason whatever you were planned wasn't available at the grocery store to prepare, then you need to change that out, and your written menu needs to match what the residents have posted out in the facility as well. State surveyors will take a look at that. That's one of the first things that they do when they walk in the building. So be sure that what you have in the kitchen on the menu matches what you have posted out in the dining room and in the residence rooms. Menus also interview the residents for food preferences. Just again, reinforcement of, and when you're planning your menus, things to keep in mind are variety, color, texture, time spent for food preparation, as well as making sure that all food groups are offered according to the dietary guidelines. So again, those dietary guidelines, you know, what fruits, vegetables, the meat, the breads, the dairies, everything in those 4 food groups with the low salt, low fat, you know, lower sugar content, you're going to want to keep those in mind when you're planning menus, when you're shopping, and then later we'll get to that food preparation part. So, and the residents' preferences. So they're going to be happy if they have the variety and the color texture in mind as well. So, and that's where too, again, a 5-week menu cycle is usually a good way to go, because you can make sure that you're getting that variety instead of always getting stuck on that spaghetti meatloaf plan. So, and then also the cost when you're determining a budget. Work with foods in season and local vendors that will provide discounts. Don't be afraid to go to those local grocery stores. A lot of times the Sysco's or you know, big food vendors will, it depending on the size of your facility, will split a pack, or they have seasonal things that, specials. But the smaller grocery stores as well in your community, you're going to be a big customer for them, so they should be willing to give you discounts as well. So don't be afraid to ask them. All they can do is say no, and usually they'll help you out. Okay, we can go back to the first part, the general requirements of the DHS 8341. Now we're going to talk more about the food supply and storage and handling of the food. Food supply. The CBRF shall maintain a food supply that is adequate to meet the needs of the residents, and food shall be obtained from acceptable sources. I'll stop here and just, you know, make sure you're getting it from a grocery store, labeling and dating the food from that source. You can go to food markets. You want to make sure things are washed. You can even, if you prepare things in the facility when you're doing maybe home canning or something like that, you can do it in the facility, but you cannot accept baked goods and home canned goods brought in by somebody else, like a family member, because you don't know how that was prepared. Okay, the equipment in the CBRF shall store equipment and utensils in a clean manner and shall maintain all utensils and equipment in good repair. Again, that's the first thing when state surveyors are walking through the building. They just come into a clean, organized kitchen with drawers all wiped down and things put away neatly. They're not going to look as deep as if things are all in disarray. And for one thing, and for another, you want to make sure that things are cleaned, because when you're using things that are dirty, that's just more risk for food infection, foodborne illness for the residents. So let's go on to C, dishwashing. Whether washed by hand or mechanical means, all equipment and utensils shall be cleaned using separate steps for pre-washing, washing, rinsing, and sanitizing. Residential dishwashers may be used in kitchens serving 20 or fewer residents, and kitchens serving 21 or more residents shall have a commercial-type dishwasher for washing and sanitizing equipment and utensils in accordance with standard practices described in the Wisconsin Food Code. And that Wisconsin Food Code is also available if you just Google that to wisconsinfoodcode.gov. There's it's lots and lots of information in there, and this is where it also says the 83, you know, but they want you to follow that food code. Ask a dietitian. She can get you the information quicker on a specific question that you may have. A 3-compartment sink for washing, rinsing, and sanitizing utensils with drain boards at each end is required for all larger facilities with a central kitchen. Washing, rinsing, and sanitizing procedures shall be in accordance with standard practices described in the Wisconsin Food Code. In addition, a single compartment sink or overhead spray wash located adjacent to the soil drain board is required for pre-washing. With all this, the biggest thing to keep in mind is that you want a clean side of the sink and a dirty side. So when things come back used, keep it dirty and clean. Keep them separate. That way you can prevent that cross-contamination of things that happen. And also there is the separate sanitizing step. It's not happening in the washing. There is a washing, a rinsing, and a sanitizing. So when you're washing down counters, you're going to want to use the soapy water, use the clean rinse water, and then sanitize with like a bleach solution, or there's a quat sanitizer you can get from a commercial vendor as well. But bleach solution works just fine. But you're going to wash, rinse, and then sanitize. It's 3 steps. Okay, DHS 8341.3, sanitation and safety. Infection control. Each employee who prepares or serves food shall be free from open infected wounds and from communicable disease and shall maintain clean and safe work habits. The CBRF shall provide hand washing facilities in the kitchen for use by food handlers. Use of a common towel is prohibited. So a few things in here. Just being aware, always washing your hands, washing the item that you're going to be using, putting it away clean, taking it out clean, always keeping that in mind, separating clean from dirty. The CBRF shall provide hand washing facilities. That sink, whether it's even in the smaller facilities and you have just the kitchen sink, making sure that that sink stays clean and using paper towels. Again, that use of common towel is prohibited, so don't even have one hanging there. Dishes should be air dried, by the way. There's a sample policy for safe food handling here, things to keep in mind. Your facility, and you're going to want to ask about this, ask your manager, there should be safe food handling policies for you to refer to. This is a sample one that you should be included. All staff will practice standard sanitary procedures when handling and serving food. The procedure, all staff will wear hair tied back and have clean clothing. Jewelry is kept at a minimum of wedding bands and small post earrings. Facial piercings are to be removed or covered. The more things that you have in your way, the more potential there is for spread of infection, spread of foodborne illness, for not only the residents but for yourself. So it's just better to keep it simple, keep your hair back, keep the jewelry down to a minimum. Wash your hands before handling food, including under fingernails. And some policies will even say keep your fingernails shorter. But wash your hands before, during, after. That's the key to keeping things clean. And you're going to want to use gloves when you're handling raw food, which we'll get to that too. Use utensils to handle food whenever possible, and gloves must be worn if raw food is handled. Avoid touching your mouth or your face while you're preparing food, and sometimes you have to really be more conscious of that. And if you catch yourself doing that, wash your hands. Use clean cloths to handle the hot utensils. Get those hot pads and dish towels that you use to carry those hot containers. Get those in the laundry often. Use clean spoons when tasting the food and do not return them to the food. Some people don't do that. Use these guidelines to handle clean dishware, glasses, and silverware. I see that a lot when I go into these facilities. And just to keep an eye on, when you're taking things out of the dishwasher and when you're going to set the table, pick up the silverware and the cups by their handles, and the dishes by their rims. Pick up the glasses by their base. You don't want to be sticking, there's 4 glasses here, I'm just going to stick my fingers in there and take the 4 glasses and put them on the table. You are just contaminating more, and the spread of diseases, or even just small bugs, is not going to help you out at all. So, and just the totally inappropriate way to handle glassware. So remember to stay on the outside and not where people are going to be drinking or eating. You just don't handle that ends of the utensils or the glasses. So store clean dishes inverted in enclosed cabinets or storage units. Store glasses and cups bottoms up so that with airflow and things that dust or whatever doesn't settle inside of them as well. You got them clean, you want to keep them clean. 8341.3, sanitation and safety continued. Food safety. Whether food is prepared at the CBRF or off-site, the CBRF shall store, prepare, distribute, and serve food under sanitary conditions for the prevention of foodborne illnesses, including food prepared off-site, according to all the following. The CBRF shall refrigerate all foods requiring refrigeration at or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. so food shall be covered and stored in a sanitary manner. The CBRF shall maintain freezing units at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below, and frozen foods shall be packaged, labeled, and dated. The CBRF shall hold hot foods at 140 degrees or above and shall hold cold foods at 40 degrees or below. I do recommend that the facility have specific written food handling and storage policies in place. There is a website here that you can go to that is very helpful, Association of Nutrition and Food Service Professional Practice Standards. Certified Dietary Managers Association also has these practices as well. www.anfponline.org/resources. It's the criteria for refrigerators, freezer, and storage, dry storage. And they're specific to food items, temperature, and time frames. It's really helpful because you're always wondering, well, how long can I keep the ketchup and the mustard? Or how long can I keep this bread? Can I throw it in the freezer? What about meats? What about leftovers? And leftovers, by the way, within 72 hours, you're going to want to throw those out as well. So that's why you want to label food. What is it? And what's the date that you put it in the refrigerator? And condiments are more like a few months, but it'll all be on that table, helpful table in that resource. Chapter 83 also says that you are required to report suspected incidents of foodborne illnesses to the local public health officer. So, and here's the website for that. You refer to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Food Safety Office at the cdc.gov website. And now we're going to go through what is foodborne illness and what are the symptoms and how can we prevent that. Foodborne illness and outbreak, illness caused by the ingestion of contaminated food or beverages. The outbreak is when there's 2 or more unrelated people that ate similar meals. So that's one thing for sure right away, that you're going to see that somebody may be sitting at the same table and they ate that same menu choice, and the next day, or it could be a few days later, that they started having symptoms of the foodborne illness, and we'll go through that. Fever, sore throat, sudden onset of vomiting, or the diarrhea. Those are the most common ones. Risk factors for foodborne illness is poor personal hygiene. Again, this is why we want you to wash your hands, wear clean clothing, put your hair back, and the residents too. They need to have their hands washed before they eat, have clean clothing on, keep their hair back. Food from unsafe sources. Again, this goes back to your grocery shopping, making sure when you're picking up the fruit and the vegetables, you're under a budget, but you want to make sure that you're also getting quality food that's going to be not still taste good and not be damaged in any way. You're going to want to watch for those bulging cans. Don't get any bulging cans. Fruit that is bruised. Things that look like they've been mishandled in any way. You're going to want inadequate cooking. You're going to want to make sure that you get those temperatures, especially of the meats, up to over 165 or greater, and for a while. And we'll talk more about that. Also, when you're cutting fruit or vegetables or meat, use different cutting boards. Have them color coordinated so that the green board is always for the vegetables and the white board is always for the meat, things like that. So, and then sanitizing them after every use with the bleach solution after they've been gone through the dishwasher. Improper holding temperatures. When you're done serving, and actually even before you start serving, you want to make sure that you've prepared the food. You either keep it cold or hot, not between 40 and 140 degrees for any length of period that you can help. And then after this food has been served and there's leftovers to be stored or things to be put away, you want to make sure that you get those either cold or hot right away. Because the longer something sits at room temperature, the faster any bacteria that is present will grow. We talked about the contaminated equipment, just making sure that everything is washed, rinsed, and sanitized correctly. Another way to prevent foodborne illness is your employee health. When you have the flu, whether it's the stomach flu or the upper respiratory, You're better off not coming into work. You're just going to make the residents and other staff members sick, and you're going to spread the bacteria and the virus. The best thing you can do is frequent hand washing, use of gloves, and even antimicrobial gel will help. Safe food preparation, obviously. Just being careful of how you prepare and store things. Properly cleaned and sanitized equipment. That too. You can say it over and over, but you have to take those few minutes to make sure that everything is cleaned and sanitized before you put it away. And actually, it helps to have a cleaning schedule of things that get done on a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis. You don't always have to clean that oven out, but if you clean it up after every spill and then once a month clean it out, it just helps keep things on a cleaner basis, and you're saving yourself work too. Safe food preparation, let's talk a little bit about that. Avoiding the cross-contamination, again, with the different cutting boards, or keeping, again, it's the raw separate from the cooked, clean separate from the dirty. Proper thawing of meats. The proper way to unthaw meat is to take it out of the freezer a few days before and leaving it on the bottom shelf of the refrigerator in a tray, so that if there's any juices, they won't, that raw meat juice won't leach out onto anything else in the refrigerator. So you don't want it up on top, so on the bottom in a tray for it to thaw out gradually. If for some reason you didn't get that out in time, you can put it in a sink of cold water for a few hours as well. Those are the only two ways that meat should be unthawed. Don't leave it out sitting on the counter all day. Don't even let it happen. Final cooking temperatures, making sure that it's over 165. And there's also, back at that website for the Certified Dietary Managers Association, it'll give you cooking times and temps for different kinds of meats. Reheating food, there too, you want to make sure that it's heated up to over 165 before you serve it. So it's a good idea to have that food thermometer in the kitchen and handy. Keep it calibrated and keep it wiped clean between usage. Calibrating a food thermometer, you just would put it in a glass of water and let it sit there run it to get it to zero it out before you start, put it into something else. Cooling of foods too, making sure that they're under 40, covering them up, putting them in shallow pans rather than the big dish that you had it in. Say you have a big casserole and it's deep and it's still pretty hot. You don't want to stick that in the refrigerator. You're just going to warm everything else up in the refrigerator, and you're going to not cool that thing down, item down fast enough. So you want to take it out of what you cooked it in and put it in a smaller, shallower container so it cools faster, and you're using better use of your refrigerator space. That's another reason why you don't want to put any metal pots and pans into the refrigerator. I've seen that done as well. Take it out of what it was cooked in and put it into the refrigerator in a different container. Use food within appropriate time frame, labeling and dating those foods when you purchase them and when you prepare them. Again, that's a very important thing, especially when you've got different shifts coming in and different people in the kitchen. It's easy for anybody to go in and say, okay, this is the soup that I'm supposed to use and it was made this date. Another point with that is you make a big batch of soup and you only use half of it one day. You're going to label and date the other half and put it in the freezer for a later date. When you pull it out of the freezer, you're going to want to, and now you're preparing it for that date, put today's date on it then, because otherwise that old date is still on there and the next person coming in is going to be like, whoa, this is old and we got to throw it out, or or state service may be walking in and saying, what's this from? So you want to make sure that you're dating things timely. Here's that website again too. It's www.anfponline.org/resources, and that will also give you times of how long to keep things again. Reheating foods. Foods that have been properly cooled can be reheated to any temperature if for immediate consumption. So again, if you get it cooled fast enough and then reheat it, a resident went out on an outing and that you're bringing them back and they want to eat their dinner, put it on a plate, put it in the microwave, test that first and make sure that it's hot, not too hot, but warm enough for them to eat, and they need to eat it right away. So don't put it in the microwave and then they have to go do something else and you're doing something else and then you're bringing it out and it's been microwaved and microwaved and microwaved. So be sure you know when they're coming back and time that appropriately. If the food is going to be held hot, reheat to 165, like we've said before, and within 2 hours, and hold at 135 degrees or above. So that soup that you would have brought out from the freezer, heat it to 165. You can put it, if you have a steam table or keeping it on the back of the stove, you want to make sure that that stays over 135 degrees until serving time. When cooling the foods, use these methods, and we've talked about this too. You want to put them in shallow pans. You can put that pan then into ice if you need to get that stirred, cooled down quicker, and then stir it. Just like you would a plate that's too hot. You can stir that up; it'll cool it down quicker. Putting food into smaller quantities will help cool quicker too. So, in summary, from when the grocery store to the menu planning to pantry, to the food preparing, and then when you're serving the food, it's important to handle it appropriately every step of the way. Even when you're getting the groceries and putting them away, washing your hands before, during, and after. Keep the surfaces and equipment clean and sanitized where food is prepared and stored. And pay attention to the time and the temperature when preparing, serving, and storing food as well. And keep those dietary guidelines in mind. Just remember, you're responsible for providing your residents with nutritious meals that they can enjoy. Mealtime is one of the biggest part of their day. And that's how you do it, with the dietary guidelines and following the food preparation in a safe, sanitary manner. Thank you for joining us.